Field Notes cover lined with a red bandana. I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, so not a Field Notes cover, but actually a passport cover. This was something that I had made up previously. I didn't like how I lined it before, so I kind of tore it apart, and then I got some new stamps and was playing around, so I decided just to use it for educational purposes. So this is just what we're going to be using as the example. So here's the bandana I chose. This came from a bulk lot I had purchased on Amazon. You can obviously get them at Hobby Lobby. That's where a lot of people get them. The ones at Hobby Lobby are better. I found that out after the fact. These ones, the design's a little goofy to try to place, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a section right there and just try to line the paisleys up in the middle here, this portion here. I'm going to try to just keep on the spine because there's going to be a pocket here and a pocket here. So my goal is to just have this portion visible when you open the cover up. So what I'm going to do is just kind of cut around that loosely. It's not going to be precision at all because that will get taken care of after the glue up. So after I cut the piece of bandana going on, what I do is I lay them inverse of one another so that all I have to do is spray them, and then once the cement tacks up, all I have to do is just lift this piece, flip it over onto that one, and I know that everything's oriented correctly so that when it's time to attach them, there's no fumbling around, or because this stuff is really sticky, and you want to get it right the first time, or it's super hard to go back. So one of the big questions out there is, what do you use to attach this? What am I supposed to use? Is it spray adhesive, barge, what? Weldwood's another one. Typically when you're cementing leather together, barge to me is kind of king of the castle. Everybody has their own opinion, but the problem with using a regular contact cement when you're trying to attach a fabric to a leather is what ends up happening is you're brushing on the adhesive to the fabric, it bleeds through, and that creates a problem for the other side, especially when you go to, say if you're using a veneer roller, when you go to attach it, it goops on through, and then your fingers are rubbing on it, and it makes a mess, and then you're trying to clean it off, but it's stuck through, and it just creates all kinds of problems no matter how light or heavy you go. So the answer is obviously a spray adhesive. Now this is the 3M 90, which I will admit is overkill. This is the biggest and the best. The stream comes out of this, as you're about to see, is very focused. It's not a wide angle of spray. It even says right there, precision spray control. Reason I chose this was because I thought I need the most strong, the biggest and the best. I believe it's 77, I think, has a mist spray. So once this is used up, I will be trying the 3M 77 as kind of a comparable option, because as you're about to see also, when you spray this on a leather piece, it's not full coverage. So what I end up doing is actually wiping the spine down, because that is what to me is the most important part of adhesion on these, because that's what's going to experience the stress, the opening and the closing, the flexing back and forth, back and forth. So I do it to the leather, not the fabric, because what you want to do is you want to lay this down the fabric and then don't touch it. Let it tack up, because the minute you touch it, you're going to make it bleed through. I have had it happen. So watch, we're going to spray these down and get them glued up. Okay, so when I glue these, 6 to 8 inches is probably optimal spray distance. What I like to do is kind of crisscross my patterns just for a more fuller coverage. So as you can see here, I just kind of then I do a little extra on the spine where I know it's going to need to stick really well. Same with over here. And then what I do before I let it tack up, obviously you can wear gloves if you want, but where that spine is here, where you know there's going to be a lot of flexing, you can see how it's kind of just spider webbed on there. But what I like to do is just kind of spread it out, make sure the coverage is really good. Obviously you can do it to the whole thing if you really wanted to, but I just focus on the spine because that's where I found is it'll kind of crinkle up once you get it glued. When you open and close, you don't want, you know, you can try to minimize the wrinkling of the fabric as it closes. When you do that, it helps with the adhesion so that it all stays and moves as one. Okay, it's go time as far as gluing the two pieces together. I'm going to put them together with my hands first and then finish the job with a veneer roller here. So, like we positioned them before, you just want to pick it up real careful, flip it over, and make sure, you know, you're going to cover your whole piece. I kind of cut this one a little close so I know exactly where I need to be with it. But what I like to do is I just start at one end, get it placed with my fingers, and just kind of work it across. Real light, just in case you need to go back. And this gives you a little bit of wiggle room as far as you know, I need to pull it down to the bottom just a little bit more. And then you can also feel those wrinkles getting pushed out too. But you want it nice and flat. See, I messed it up there, so pull off just a little bit. And that's pretty good. Okay, so right after we glue it up, then what I do is you take the veneer roller. I don't move the piece from the spot where it was before. The edges are kind of glued to the paper anyway. That's a good thing at this point because you don't want your piece to move around. So once we got it all flat and nice where we like it, and I focus a lot on the edges too. Go over them once more. And then of course the spine, that is the most important part in my opinion at this point, because that's where the most adhesion needs to take place, because that's where our stress is going to be from the flexing. So there is some edges to be trimmed here. This is the point in the construction process where all I do is, you can see the excess here. If you happen to also own sewing equipment, then you've got one of these. It's a rotary cutter. You could use a utility knife if you wanted. You could use your X-Acto or whatever you've got, scissors. Rotary cutter for me works just fine. Butt it up against the edge and just carefully roll along. Bottom looks okay, side looks okay. And then of course the rest of the trimming for me, what I do in that process is, once, you know, it's hanging over a little bit on the edge, but once we put the interior pieces and glue them on, then the entire perimeter of this thing gets trimmed with a utility blade anyway. So that's good enough to keep rolling with. Okay, here's all the pieces ready for the final glue and stitch. With a little bit of movie magic, we'll do just that. One thing I did forget to show myself actually doing was use a mat, use a T-square, use your little grid squares there, square it up, trim your edges. You should be left with just some little skinny guys here, because if you obviously take too much, then your stitch line ends up either being too close to the edge, or you don't have enough room for your passport or whatever you're putting in there. So this one should be, it's going to be pretty tight, but I'm testing out a really thin, I got some twist thread that I'm going to be trying out, so hopefully I get the stitch line right and we'll be able to get the passport in there just fine. Just got to round the edges and it's ready for stitching. Okay, let's take a look at the bandana as we near the final phases here after glue up and stitching and all that. Once you trim, you can see the bottom here is a nice clean cut. The top is not. That is because I took an X-Acto knife at an angle and kind of carved away at this one. The principle is going to remain the same after you apply your edge coat. It's going to take those fibers, whether clean or a little bit messy there, and the idea is to just get it to melt everything all together, glue it all together in one nice edge. So we're going to do it both ways. It's kind of a for fun project, so I'm not too concerned about the outcome, but it's more of an example to just show my methods. Okay, today we are going to finish up here with the edge coat. I went ahead and did the stuff that I'm assuming most everybody who's ever used edge coat knows how to do. But I left the top, can't really see that in the light too well, and the bottom. Just going to go over that and talk a little bit about the project and just some thoughts, some final words. One thing I didn't mention here was with edge coat, and I'm sure some of y'all have figured it out already, that when you apply it to a project, say for example here, let's do the top first here. This is a little bit more frayed. Don't go too wild. You want to catch those fibers and help kind of glue them back to the leather, glue them to the rest of the edge coat. And then I try to make just a nice clean line so it's a little bit presentable too if say your customer opens it up and they don't see all the gobs in the different areas where you've gone. Sometimes I even carry that line down a little bit. Not always, but sometimes. It just kind of depends on how successful you are in kind of shaping that edge up. Really what I've just done here within the first 15-20 seconds, that's it. I mean, sometimes if I see a little bit of thinness, I will go over it again. But one thing that I do at the very end is, just like before you even use edge coat, you want to burnish your edges, and you can do that with edge coat to an extent. What I mean by that is you're not actually burnishing the edge coat, but because edge coat is kind of a rubbery, plasticky feel to it when it first goes on, and how it kind of dries hard. You can see, maybe not so much on the video, but it kind of grows a little bit, and it kind of sticks up, kind of, you know, there's a definable edge to it where it combined the fibers and the leather and everything all together. What you're going to do is at the very end, you take your burnisher, and of course my workspace is a disaster, but that'll be the very last thing I do. Is you can actually kind of push that edge coat down into submission, into kind of a shape that matches the rest of the leather, that matches the rest of the edge, and it seems to have worked. I just did another passport cover kind of parallel with this one. It was playing with that turquoise color a little bit, and I used a very high visibility bandana as a liner. It was actually high vis green, and I kind of had that issue where this kind of raises up a little bit, where you're dragging along the edge like that. And at the very end, I took that burnisher and just kind of worked that edge coat down into a good little shape. It still works, still coated the edge real nice, but that's kind of the icing on the cake when you're doing something like this and trying to seamlessly have a liner like this bandana, but you're taking it to an edge that's just a raw edge. You know, a lot of people, especially on larger projects, you can have that really thin piece of leather that you use as an edge dressing, but you know, in my case, I don't do that. I don't sew with machines. I don't have leather that thin, so obviously there needs to be another solution. Well, this is just my solution. Edge coat remains flexible to an extent. I did find though that if I put it on flat, you know, and left it open and flat like that, and then I let it dry, that you are kind of forcing it beyond its limits, and you will have a little bit of cracking, so you have to touch it up after that. That may be one of the downfalls to it. I've kind of pre-folded this one a little bit just to get the shape of, you know, because this is how it's going to live, you know, in a purse or a bag. This is how it's going to live. So you don't want to have it closed and then have it cracked. I'd rather have it closed and kind of overcompensate that edge coat a little bit and have it just bunge up on itself without cracking off in the future. This method that I've been doing isn't exactly old enough to say, oh yeah, it lasts for 1 year, 2 year, 10 years. But I think with a lot of my products especially, you're going to have, that wear factor. And with all leather goods, you're going to have that wear factor where it's going to get dented and bumped and scratched, and it's going to build that character. Now, I'm not saying that, that's the excuse to just use edge coat and it, when it falls off, it falls off. For an out-of-the-box finished look, I think this is acceptable by means of when you use a liner like this. Should it crack away and fray down the road, I don't want to say that's going to give the piece character. Obviously, that's sort of a failure on the edge coat's part. But going through all the steps that I've shown, you use a really good adhesive. You want to press roll it on with a veneer roller and have that solid adhesion. You want to get it close to the edge. Most of mine, I just cut flush. You don't have to trim the fabric back to get the edge coat on and help glue it back together. You don't have to do that. Like I said with the burnisher, you can kind of shape it at the very, very end. But going through all those quality steps to ensure that you have the best glue up, that you have the best cut, the cleanest cut, that I think is going to ensure a good longevity of your product in the end. And should it wear and tear? Well, nothing lasts forever, obviously. But I think with fine leather goods too, I would come to expect, I own Red Wing boots, I own other leather products. Nothing stays like it comes out of the box. You have wear and tear, you have those scuffs, and it's the character of the product. So that'll happen along the road, down the road too. But for now, I think that this method, and like I've said before, I'm not trying to say I've reinvented the wheel here, because I haven't. This is just my specific method of doing things. Other people have their way of doing it. Somebody may watch this video and say, oh, you're an idiot, you've done it wrong, this is totally not the way you do it. So be it, right? This is just my way of doing it. This is me sharing with the world how I do it. It's not the wheel reinvented. I wouldn't even say I've built a better mousetrap. This is just my way of doing it, and sort of sharing with the leather community, for those that have questioned it and say, oh, how do you get the bandana in there? Or how do I line this with that? I've seen some of these, or the wallets with, the skull pattern in the middle. Same process, folks. You're just taking a fabric and you're gluing it to the inside. It's just my method of gluing. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I might throw a couple pictures at the very end to kind of showcase this one, maybe the other one I've made too. But yeah, I apologize for being so wordy, because I tend to get carried away doing that, and this is going to be like a 10-15 minute video if I keep carrying on. But yeah, it's just one of my methods. Like, I haven't been doing this very long, a couple of years maybe, a few projects here and there, some custom stuff people have ordered. I am by no means a master of this craft. I just kind of blazed my own trail with my own style, as you can see here from the crazy colors, especially this one, just the experimentation with the paints and the stamping and the stitching and everything. But it's just my method. You can modify, change, do whatever the heck you want. But hope you like my way of doing it. I hope this stands a test of time, because there are some of them out in the wild now that are being actively used. I've got 2 that have been to Israel and back already. So that's kind of exciting for my line of work, that something I kind of picked up as a side thing, or just a hobby to, something out there existed that I wanted. You couldn't buy it anywhere, so I said, well, I'll just make it, and got into leather making, and kind of took off from there. So yeah, I've got stuff that's been around the world now, and it's exciting to see. And we learn every day and we grow every day. So thanks for sticking with it, and yeah, hope you all enjoy. If you got any creative or constructive criticism, especially, you know, I don't have thin skin, so feel free to holler if there's something you say is, oh, that's definitely a problem, or hey, this works but do this. Yeah, holler. We're here to learn, not to dog on each other. So there it is, the I call it the Exploding Stars Kitty Cat Butterfly neon green passport cover. So there it is. Thanks for watching, and hopefully if this goes well, we might see some more videos in the future. Thanks, guys. Before I let you go, though, I will demonstrate what I was explaining there with the burnisher, and it's really simple. You just find that shape you want. Don't go too crazy with it. Don't pretend like you're actually burnishing it, because you're not. All you're doing is shaping. You're just using the wooden tip to shape, and you get that edge pressed down, pressed in, and to where it's not jagged or raised like we had discussed before. And of course, especially with the one that's flush cut, it's basically 90 degrees. So you just go at that 45 and kind of just tame it down a little bit. That's it. The end. Minus another coat of Resolene, but I won't bore you with that. So thanks again. Hope you all enjoyed. Thanks again for sticking with it. Ended up being a super long video, but appreciate the patience, and just hoping everybody was able to benefit from it and learn as we grow every day. Thanks.